I don't think you'll be staying here anymore, Rebecca. This cabin is for family, and clearly, you no longer qualify. Nathan's voice cut through the elegant mountain lodge like an icy wind, silencing the dinner conversation as all eyes turned to me. My husband of 6 years stood across the dining table, his expression cold and unreadable, as he publicly dismissed me from our vacation home in front of everyone at Eagle Crest Resort's annual Winter Gala. I froze, wineglass halfway to my lips as 20 pairs of eyes shifted toward me. The exclusive owner's dinner at Eagle Crest Resort had instantly transformed from a sophisticated networking event into my personal nightmare. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Nathan Miller stood there, 6 feet of tailored arrogance, his investment banker confidence on full display. The fireplace cast shadows across his face as he continued. Tell them about the renovation disaster, Rebecca. The one where you convinced me to let you redesign the cabin, only to have your contractor abandon the project halfway through, leaving us with a $200,000 hole in the ground right before the investor weekend. The polished hardwood floor beneath my heels seemed to tilt. That renovation had been sabotaged. The contractor mysteriously backed out after receiving a better offer the day before the investors arrived. I'd scrambled to find a replacement, but the damage to my reputation among our social circle had been done, and now Nathan was ensuring everyone remembered it. Nathan? Victor Blackwood, the resort owner and Nathan's boss, laughed uncomfortably from the head of the table, his silver hair gleaming in the chandelier light. Perhaps this discussion is better suited for a private moment. But Nathan wasn't finished. Victor, you know I've been coming to Eagle Crest since I was a child. My family has owned Pinewood Cabin for 3 generations. And suddenly, I'm married to a woman who nearly cost you the Westridge Investment Group with her amateur attempt at project management? Quite the coincidence, wouldn't you say? The silence in the vaulted dining room was deafening. I felt heat rising in my cheeks and the weight of judgmental stares from resort owners and executives. My carefully cultivated image as a successful event planning entrepreneur was crumbling in real time, and all I could do was sit there, paralyzed by the public ambush. I need a moment, I finally managed, placing my napkin beside my barely touched venison and rising from the table, dignity hanging by a thread. I heard chairs shifting as I walked away, but I kept moving. Behind me, Nathan's voice carried across the room. You know, she tried to pitch her event planning services to the resort last season? Victor was kind enough not to mention how thoroughly unprepared she was. Couldn't even present a proper business proposal. Another lie. I'd never pitched services to Victor, but the damage was done. Outside on the stone terrace, the frigid mountain air stung my face. I gripped the snow-dusted railing, trying to steady my breathing while gazing at the twinkling lights of Aspen Grove below. 5 years of building mile-high events from nothing, of proving myself in Colorado's competitive luxury event planning market, potentially undone by Nathan's calculated public attack. The heavy glass door slid open behind me. I expected Victor coming to smooth things over, but instead it was Sophia Chen, the resort's spa director, her expression a mixture of sympathy and discomfort. He had no right, she said without preamble, coming to stand beside me and offering a cashmere wrap for my shoulders. Everyone in there knows it. Do they? I asked bitterly, accepting the wrap, because it seemed like they were all quite ready to believe him. Sophia sighed, her breath forming clouds in the cold air. Nathan has significant influence here. His investment firm handles most of the owner's portfolios, and his family has history with the resort. People don't cross him. Why now? I whispered, more to myself than to her. We've been having problems, but this was calculated. Sophia finished for me, giving me a knowing look. You really don't know? I shook my head, confused. The board is voting next week on a major expansion. Victor is retiring, and they're selecting a new managing partner. Nathan's been positioning himself for months, but he needs to present a certain image, a stable family man with deep roots at the resort. She hesitated. And I heard through the staff that he's been spending time with Elise Hammond. Victor's daughter? My stomach dropped. Elise had recently returned from Europe to help with resort operations. The very one, Sophia confirmed. Having a messy separation while campaigning for the position would be inconvenient. Having it finalized quietly before the vote would be much cleaner. That explained the timing of tonight's humiliation, but the viciousness still stunned me. Rebecca. Nathan's voice came from behind us. Sophia squeezed my arm and slipped back inside, leaving us alone on the freezing terrace. That was quite a performance, I said, not turning to face him. It wasn't personal, he replied, his tone businesslike. You know how important this partnership is to me. Now I turned, incredulous. Not personal? You just humiliated me in front of the entire resort leadership. You accused me of incompetence and using you for connections. I was simply explaining why our arrangement isn't working anymore. He stood with hands in his pockets, completely at ease, as if discussing a minor business setback rather than the implosion of our marriage. Our arrangement? Is that what 6 years of marriage is to you? Let's be practical, Rebecca. We both know things haven't been working for a while. I've had my lawyer draw up settlement papers. You'll find them quite generous. The casual cruelty of it stole my breath. And the cabin? Our home? The cabin belongs to my family, he said dismissively. You'll need to have your things out by the end of the week. I've already arranged for a suite at the Mountain View Hotel in town until you find something more permanent. I stared at him. This stranger I'd shared a bed with for 6 years. You've been planning this. Tonight wasn't a spontaneous outburst. It was a calculated public execution. Something flickered in his eyes. Not regret, but perhaps annoyance at being so transparent. The timing was necessary. I need a clean break before the board vote. And Elise Hammond? Was her timing necessary too? His slight flinch told me Sophia's information was accurate. That's not relevant to our discussion. Of course it is, I said, a cold clarity washing over me. This isn't about the cabin, renovation, or my business. This is about you needing to rewrite our history so you can step into your next chapter unencumbered. You're making this more dramatic than it needs to be, Nathan said, checking his watch. I need to get back to Victor. We're discussing the financing for the Northridge development. By all means, I gestured toward the door. Don't let your wife's devastation keep you from networking. He hesitated, perhaps expecting tears or pleading. Instead, I turned back to the view, dismissing him as thoroughly as he had dismissed me. After a moment, I heard the door slide open and closed. Alone on the terrace, I let the mountain wind whip tears from my eyes. I wouldn't give Nathan or any of them the satisfaction of seeing me break down. My phone buzzed with a text from Melissa, my sister. Just checking in. How's the fancy dinner going? How could I even begin to explain? Call you later, I typed with numb fingers. I couldn't face going back inside, where Nathan was undoubtedly already spinning his narrative to sympathetic colleagues. Instead, I took the stone path that wound behind the lodge toward Pinewood Cabin, his, vacation home nestled among the pines. The walk gave me time to process the calculated nature of Nathan's attack. This wasn't a spontaneous decision. He had orchestrated every element, from the public setting to the already prepared divorce papers to the hotel room waiting for me. He had been planning my disposal while sleeping beside me, sharing meals, discussing future plans. At the cabin, I unlocked the door with shaking hands. The space that had once felt like a sanctuary now seemed like a stage set, perfect in its rustic luxury, but ultimately hollow. Photos of us hiking, skiing, and entertaining friends mocked me from reclaimed wood shelves. Half-packed Christmas. Decorations sat in boxes. We'd planned to decorate the tree this weekend. My phone rang. Melissa calling back. This time I answered. "Beck, what's going on?" Her voice was instantly concerned. "Nathan just ended our marriage. In public. At the owner's dinner." My voice sounded strange even to my own ears. Too calm, disconnected. "He what?" The outrage in her voice was oddly comforting. "What happened?" As I explained the evening's events, I moved through the cabin gathering essentials, medications, important documents, favorite clothes. If I had until the end of the week to move out, I'd take what mattered most tonight. "That calculating bastard," Melissa fumed when I finished. "I'm driving up tomorrow. You shouldn't be alone right now." "No need," I said, surprising myself with my steadiness. "I'm driving back to Denver tonight. I need to get out of here." "Tonight?" "Beck, it's almost 10, and it's a 3-hour drive in good conditions. There's snow in the forecast." "I can't sleep here, Mel. Not after that. The cabin doesn't feel like mine anymore. Maybe it never was." I zipped my suitcase with finality. Besides, I need to be in my office tomorrow. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. If Nathan is trying to damage my professional reputation, I need to do damage control immediately. After reassuring Melissa I would text her when I reached Denver safely, I did a final sweep of the cabin. 6 years of my life in this marriage, 3 years coming to this cabin, and what did I have to show for it? A suitcase of clothes and a broken heart. As I loaded my car, I noticed lights still blazing in the main lodge. The dinner would be wrapping up, with guests moving to the bar for cocktails and continued networking. Nathan would be there, perhaps standing near the fireplace with Victor and Elise, already crafting his new future. The drive down the mountain gave me time to think. Nathan had blindsided me, but some part of me wasn't entirely surprised. Our marriage had been cooling for months. His late nights at the office, my immersion in growing my business, our increasingly separate lives. Still, I'd never expected such a calculated public dismissal. By the time I reached Denver, exhaustion had given way to something else. A slow-burning anger that felt almost clarifying. Nathan hadn't just ended our marriage. He had attempted to destroy my professional reputation and social standing in one surgical strike. In my downtown loft, thankfully maintained as my office space despite Nathan's insistence that I didn't need it, I dropped my suitcase and opened my laptop. Sleep was impossible, so I might as well be productive. I navigated to my banking app, relieved to confirm that my business accounts were separate from our joint finances. At least Nathan couldn't touch mile-high events. Almost unconsciously, I opened a new document and began typing. Nathan Miller, Eagle Crest Resort, Connections. If Nathan was going to try to ruin me, I needed to understand exactly what I was up against. By 3 a.m., fueled by black coffee and simmering rage, I had created a detailed map of Nathan's business relationships, resort connections, and the Eagle Crest ownership structure. Victor Blackwood held controlling interest, with the remaining shares distributed among legacy families and a few institutional investors. Nathan's firm, Summit Partners, managed investments for most of the individual owners, giving him significant influence despite owning only his family's small share. Most interestingly, I discovered that Eagle Crest was facing financial pressures despite its exclusive image. The Northridge development Nathan had mentioned was more than an expansion, it was a financial necessity. The resort needed an influx of capital to modernize aging infrastructure and compete with newer luxury destinations. I sat back, mind racing with this new information. Nathan had built his reputation on being an investment genius. But if Eagle Crest was struggling financially under his guidance, perhaps that image was as carefully constructed as our marriage had been. My phone buzzed with a notification. Someone had tagged me in a post on Instagram. With a sense of dread, I opened the app to find a photo from the resort dinner, a perfectly timed shot capturing my shocked expression as Nathan spoke. The caption read, "Some people just aren't cut out for mountain life. Sharm marriage fail, Chark Eagle Crest Resort. Know your place." It was posted from an anonymous account, but the targeted cruelty left little doubt who was behind it. Comments were already accumulating, some expressing confusion or support, but others piling on with vague insinuations about my character and abilities. I set the phone down, hands shaking with a mixture of humiliation and fury. This wasn't just about ending our marriage. Nathan was systematically attempting to erase me from his world, to paint me as incompetent and unworthy of the social circle we'd shared. As dawn broke over Denver's skyline, I made a decision. I wouldn't just survive this, I would fight back. Not with public accusations or social media warfare, but with something Nathan would understand far better: business strategy. I opened my contact list and scrolled to Diana Patel, the attorney who had helped me establish Mile High Events. It was barely 6 a.m., but this couldn't wait. "Rebecca?" Diana answered, her voice thick with sleep. "What's wrong?" "Everything," I said simply, "and I need your help to make it right." As I explained the situation, a plan began forming. One, that would require every business skill I'd developed, every contact I'd made, and a level of strategic thinking I'd never before attempted. Nathan thought he could discard me without consequences. He was about to discover how profoundly he had underestimated me. The resort he loved, the position he coveted, the future he'd planned, none of it was as secure as he believed. I ended the call with Diana and opened my laptop again, this time searching for Eagle Crest Resort financial troubles and Victor Blackwood retirement plans. This wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about justice, and perhaps a bit of well-deserved revenge. The morning after Nathan's public execution of our marriage, I sat in my Denver loft office surrounded by documents, spreadsheets, and half-empty coffee cups. My event planning business had given me an eye for details and the ability to organize chaos, skills I was now applying to understand exactly what was happening at Eagle Crest Resort. Diana arrived at 8 a.m. with legal pads and determination. I'd worked with her for years on business contracts, but never for something so personal. "I've pulled everything I could find on Eagle Crest's financial structure," she said, spreading documents across my conference table. "You're right about the money troubles. They've been operating at a loss for 3 consecutive quarters." I pointed to the North Ridge development plans I'd found online. Nathan made it sound like this expansion was a victory lap, but it looks more like a Hail Mary pass. Diana nodded, examining the prospectus. "They need this development to succeed. The traditional ownership model isn't generating enough revenue to cover operating costs and necessary upgrades. And Nathan's positioning himself to lead this rescue mission," I added, thinking of his careful orchestration of the previous night, with Victor's daughter by his side for extra credibility. "About that," Diana said, pulling out her tablet. "I did some digging into the Blackwood family dynamics. Victor has been trying to get Elise involved in resort operations for years, but she's been resistant. Her sudden interest coincides perfectly with Nathan's marriage problems." I felt a fresh wave of anger. "So he's using her too?" "Most likely. The question is whether she realizes it." Diana gave me a careful look. "Rebecca, what exactly are you hoping to accomplish here? If you're looking for leverage in the divorce, I can certainly help. But this level of research suggests something more." I stared at the documents spread before me, considering her question. What did I want? Initially, simple survival, to protect my reputation in business. But as the pieces came together, I saw something else. An opportunity. "Nathan didn't just end our marriage," I finally said. "He attempted to destroy everything I've built. He's trying to erase me from a world I've been part of for 6 years. I want to show him and everyone at Eagle Crest that I won't be so easily dismissed. Diana leaned forward. What are you thinking? I'm thinking it's time I took a real interest in the resort business. I pulled up Eagle Crest's investment structure on my laptop. Victor Blackwood owns 51% of the resort, but the remaining shares are fragmented among legacy families and investors, many of whom, according to what Sophia told me, have portfolios managed by Nathan's firm. You want to buy shares? Diana looked skeptical. Even if you could afford it, those legacy families rarely sell. Not directly, I agreed. But there's another way in. I pointed to a line item in the financial report. Eagle Crest has $24 million in debt coming due in 6 months. They're counting on the North Ridge development to attract new capital. But what if another investor stepped in? Diana's eyes widened. You can't possibly have that kind of capital. Not personally, I admitted. But Mile High Events has established relationships with investors who trust my judgment. People who've made money backing my projects. I hesitated. Including Jacob Harrison. Jacob Harrison of Alpine Ventures? Diana looked impressed. How do you know him? I planned his daughter's wedding 3 years ago. It was my first major luxury event, and I went above and beyond to make it perfect. I smiled at the memory. Jacob was so pleased he became both a client and a mentor. He's helped me understand investment strategies for growing my business. Diana made notes, her expression thoughtful. It's ambitious. Even if Harrison was interested, we'd need a comprehensive business plan showing how this investment makes sense. I've been handling logistics for luxury clients for years, I replied, confidence building. I understand what high-end travelers want better than most of the current ownership. Eagle Crest is trading on its history rather than innovation, and they're losing market share because of it. We spent the next several hours outlining a preliminary strategy. By noon, I had a meeting scheduled with Jacob for the following day and a clearer picture of what I was up against. My phone had been buzzing periodically with messages from friends and acquaintances who'd either witnessed last night's scene or seen the Instagram post. I ignored most, but answered Melissa, assuring her I was okay and working on a plan. I was about to suggest a lunch break when my phone rang with a number I didn't recognize. Rebecca Miller, I answered, slipping into professional mode. Rebecca, it's Sophia Chen from Eagle Crest. Her voice was hushed, as if she was calling from somewhere private. Do you have a moment? Of course, Sophia. Is everything all right? Not exactly. She paused. After you left last night, things got complicated. Nathan's been telling everyone you're having a nervous breakdown over business failures, and that's why you overreacted to what he called a simple discussion about separating. My grip tightened on the phone. That's completely false. I know, but he's convincing, and people want to believe him. It makes them more comfortable than acknowledging they witnessed something cruel. She lowered her voice further. That's not why I'm calling, though. There's an emergency board meeting scheduled for Monday. They're moving up the vote on the managing partnership. 3 days from now? I thought it was next week. Nathan convinced Victor it couldn't wait. He's leveraging last night to position himself as the wronged party who needs to focus on business without personal distractions. Sophia hesitated. There's more. The Hammonds are hosting a pre-vote dinner at their lake house tomorrow night. Nathan and Elise will be making a joint presentation about the resort's future. The calculated efficiency of it was breathtaking. Nathan was moving faster than I'd anticipated, using my absence to solidify his narrative and position. Why are you telling me this, Sophia? I asked carefully. Because what he did was wrong, she replied simply. And because Eagle Crest has been my home for 8 years. I care about what happens to it. She paused. Victor's not as convinced about Nathan as he appears. He's concerned about the financial projections for the North Ridge project, but Nathan's been pressuring him. This was valuable intelligence. Thank you. I appreciate you reaching out. One more thing, Sophia added. Your personal items at the cabin, Nathan's arranged for them to be put in storage rather than giving you the week he promised. If there's anything important still there, you should get it soon. After we hung up, I relayed the conversation to Diana, who made more notes. This accelerates our timeline, she said. If you're serious about pursuing this, we need to move quickly. I've never been more serious about anything, I confirmed. Let's push the meeting with Jacob to today, if possible. While Diana made calls, I drove to my bank and withdrew the maximum cash allowed from my personal account, then cleared out a safety deposit box containing jewelry Nathan had given me over the years. I wasn't being vindictive, just practical. Once divorce proceedings began, those assets might be frozen. Jacob agreed to meet at 4 p.m., which gave me just enough time to put together a preliminary pitch. When I arrived at the Alpine Ventures offices in downtown Denver, I was calm and prepared in a way that surprised even me. Rebecca. Jacob greeted me warmly, his imposing physical presence softened by genuine concern. When Diana called, she mentioned it was urgent but didn't provide details. Is everything all right? Not exactly, I admitted as we settled in his corner office overlooking the mountains. I'm afraid my personal and professional lives have collided in a way I never anticipated. Over the next hour, I outlined the situation with Nathan, Eagle, Crest's financial challenges, and my emerging plan. Jacob listened attentively, asking occasional clarifying questions, but otherwise allowing me to present my case fully. Let me make sure I understand, he said when I finished. Your husband publicly humiliated you to facilitate a clean break before positioning himself for a leadership role at a financially troubled resort. Now you want to explore acquiring a significant stake in that same resort? Yes, I confirmed, meeting his gaze steadily. But not out of simple revenge. Eagle Crest has untapped potential that Nathan and the current ownership don't fully appreciate. The resort focuses almost exclusively on winter skiing and summer hiking, missing opportunities for year-round revenue streams. Jacob nodded thoughtfully. Such as? Specialized event packages, I began, warming to the topic. Corporate leadership retreats, wellness programming, culinary experiences. My clients are increasingly looking for bespoke experiences rather than traditional luxury. Eagle Crest has the setting and infrastructure but lacks vision. And you believe you can provide that vision? I know I can, I said with conviction. I've spent 5 years understanding what the ultra-wealthy want from their leisure experiences. Eagle Crest is coasting on reputation while newer properties innovate. Jacob leaned back, studying me. This would be a significant departure from event planning. Not as much as it might seem, I countered. My business is about creating exceptional experiences in luxury settings. The principles scale up remarkably well. He smiled slightly. And the fact that it would be professionally devastating for your soon-to-be ex-husband is merely a bonus? I didn't shy away from the question. I won't pretend there isn't a personal element. Nathan tried to destroy my professional reputation to smooth his path forward. But this isn't just about him. It's about recognizing a genuine business opportunity. Jacob considered this, then reached for his computer. Let's look at some numbers. For the next 2 hours, we dove into Eagle Crest's financials, comparing them with industry benchmarks and identifying areas where strategic investment could yield significant returns. Jacob's expertise helped refine my initial instincts into something more substantial. The debt situation is your entry point, he concluded as evening shadows lengthened across his office. Eagle Crest needs $24 million by June, and their current plan assumes the North Ridge development will attract that capital. If you can secure funding to address the debt directly, you'd have significant leverage. Is that something Alpine Ventures might consider? I asked directly. Possibly, Jacob replied. But not as a favor to you, Rebecca. The numbers would need to make sense, and we'd need a comprehensive business plan. Alpine isn't in the hospitality business directly. I understand completely, I assured him. I wouldn't want it any other way. Jacob checked his watch. It's Friday evening. Let's reconnect Monday after you've had time to develop the concept further. He hesitated. And Rebecca? Be careful. Financial maneuvers at this scale can get messy, especially with personal emotions involved. I left Alpine Ventures with cautious optimism. Jacob hadn't dismissed the idea outright, which from him was encouraging. As I drove back to my loft, I called Melissa to update her. "You're thinking of buying the resort?" she asked incredulously. "Beck, that's ambitious? Yes. Impossible? No." I navigated through evening traffic. "I'm not doing this alone, and I'm not making promises I can't keep." "Does Nathan know what you're planning?" "Not yet," I said, a small smile forming. "But he will." Back at my loft, I found Diana still working, surrounded by even more documents than when I'd left. "Jacob's interested," I announced, setting down my purse. "Not committed, but willing to explore further. We need a comprehensive business plan by Monday." Diana looked up from her laptop. "That gives us the weekend. But before we dive into that, there's something you should see." She turned her screen toward me, showing an email thread. I reached out to some contacts in resort development. This is from someone who worked on the preliminary engineering for the Northridge project. I scanned the emails, my heart racing as I absorbed the implications. The soil stability reports show potential issues, and Nathan's firm advised against additional testing? Diana nodded grimly. They're cutting corners to keep the project on schedule. My contact says the preliminary findings weren't conclusive, but warranted further investigation before breaking ground. This was concerning on multiple levels. Not only was it potentially dangerous, but it suggested Nathan was pushing the project forward despite legitimate safety concerns. We need more information, I decided. And I need to get back to Eagle Crest to retrieve my remaining things before Nathan disposes of them. "Are you sure that's wise?" Diana asked. "Going back there so soon?" "No," I admitted, "but it's necessary. Besides, I need to see Sophia in person, and there may be documents at the cabin that could be useful." We spent another hour planning my return to Eagle Crest. I would drive up in the morning, hopefully retrieving my belongings without confrontation. Diana would keep digging into the development issues while beginning the business plan framework. That night, alone in my loft, I allowed myself to feel the full weight of what had happened and what I was contemplating. My marriage was over. That reality hit in waves of grief that I acknowledged but couldn't indulge. Nathan had shown his true character, and dwelling on what we'd lost would only distract me from what needed to be done. Instead, I focused on practical matters, organizing financial documents and making lists of items to retrieve from the cabin. I avoided social media entirely, unwilling to see what narrative Nathan might be spinning in my absence. At midnight, I received a text from Sophia. "N moved your things to the storage facility in town. Key will be at reception under your name. Staff been told you're having difficulties and to handle with care. Some of us know better." His efficiency in erasing me was both impressive and chilling. I texted back a simple, "Thank you," then considered my options. The storage facility changed things. I no longer needed to go to the cabin itself, which was probably for the best. But I still wanted to speak with Sophia, and there was value in being seen at the resort, showing I wasn't hiding in shame as Nathan likely expected. I fell asleep finalizing a new plan. Tomorrow I would return to Eagle Crest not as Nathan Miller's disgraced wife, but as Rebecca Miller, business owner and potential investor. The resort Nathan loved so much was facing financial challenges that his expertise hadn't solved. Perhaps it was time for new vision, new leadership. And if that disrupted Nathan's carefully orchestrated future, That wouldn't be revenge, just good business. Morning brought clarity and purpose. I dressed in what I privately thought of as my power outfit, a tailored charcoal suit that projected authority without trying too hard. If I was going to walk back into Eagle Crest after being publicly humiliated, I would do so looking every inch the successful businesswoman I was. The drive to Aspen Grove gave me time to refine my approach. Direct confrontation with Nathan would serve no purpose. Better to focus on gathering information, connecting with potential allies, and laying groundwork for what might come next. When I arrived at the resort shortly after noon, I parked in the main lot, rather than using the owner's entrance Nathan and I had always used. I needed to establish a new relationship with this place, separate from my soon-to-be ex-husband. The resort lobby bustled with weekend guests checking in, ski equipment being arranged, and staff efficiently managing the controlled chaos. I walked confidently to the reception desk, aware of curious glances from staff who recognized me. "Good afternoon," I greeted the young woman at the desk. Olivia, according to her name tag. "I'm Rebecca Miller. I believe there's a storage key for me." Olivia's eyes widened slightly in recognition, but her professional training held. "Of course, Ms. Miller. Mr. Miller left it for you this morning." She retrieved an envelope from beneath the counter. "Would you like assistance with your items? I can arrange for someone to help transport them." "That won't be necessary yet," I replied with a warm smile. "I'll assess what's there first." "Is Sophia Chen available? I'd like to thank her for her help last night." "Ms. Chen is conducting a staff meeting in the spa," Olivia said. "She should be finished in about 20 minutes." "Perfect. I'll wait. For her in the Mountain View Cafe, then. Thank you, Olivia." As I turned to leave, I noticed Trevor Wilson, the resort manager and Nathan's close friend, watching from across the lobby. He immediately approached, his expression a careful mask of concern. "Rebecca," he greeted me. "This is unexpected. Nathan mentioned you were taking some time in Denver to recover." The implication was clear. Nathan had been suggesting I was unstable. I smiled pleasantly, refusing to take the bait. "Trevor, how nice to see you." Yes, Denver was just what I needed to gain perspective. I gestured to the envelope. "I'm just collecting some personal items, then meeting Sophia for coffee." Trevor's smile tightened. "I see. Well, if there's anything you need, don't hesitate to ask. Though it might be best to keep your visit brief, given the circumstances. For your own comfort, of course." "How thoughtful," I replied, matching his false sincerity. "But I'm quite comfortable at Eagle Crest. After all, I've invested significant time and energy in this community." Before he could respond, I continued toward the cafe, feeling his gaze follow me across the lobby. That exchange confirmed what I'd suspected. Nathan was already controlling the narrative, positioning me as emotionally fragile and potentially disruptive. The Mountain View Cafe offered a stunning panorama of the surrounding peaks through floor-to-ceiling windows. I selected a table with good visibility of both the entrance and the view, then ordered a cappuccino and settled in to wait for Sophia. She arrived 15 minutes later, scanning the cafe before spotting me. Her relief at seeing me composed and professional was evident as she approached. "Rebecca," she said, sliding into the chair opposite mine. "You look well." "Appearances can be deceptive," I admitted with a small smile. "But I'm managing. Thank you for your message last night. You've been very kind throughout this." Sophia waved away my thanks. "What Nathan did was wrong. I've worked in luxury hospitality for 12 years and I've never seen such a calculated public humiliation." She lowered her voice. "Things are moving quickly. Victor called an emergency executive committee meeting this morning. Nathan presented preliminary partnership terms that would give him operational control once Victor steps back." My cappuccino suddenly tasted bitter. That was fast. Too fast for some of the committee, Sophia continued. There were questions about the financial projections that Nathan couldn't fully answer. Victor has requested more detailed analysis before Monday's full board meeting. This was valuable intelligence. How did Nathan respond to the pushback? Not well, Sophia said with a grimace. He's used to deference from the resort leadership. Being challenged, especially with Elise present, clearly irritated him. I considered this information. And Elise, what's her position? Sophia glanced around before answering. Officially supportive of Nathan's vision. Unofficially? I've known Elise for years. She's ambitious but pragmatic. If she senses Nathan's position weakening, she won't go down with him. Our conversation was interrupted by a server delivering Sophia's tea. Once we were alone again, I decided to be more direct. Sophia, why are you helping me? It potentially puts your position at risk. She considered the question carefully. Eagle Crest has been my home and livelihood for 8 years. I've watched Victor build something special, then slowly lose his way as he focused on retirement. Nathan presents himself as the resort savior, but his vision is all about monetization, not guest experience. She met my eyes directly. I've seen your work, Rebecca. The events you've planned here showed genuine understanding of what makes a luxury experience meaningful. That perspective is what Eagle Crest needs, not another finance executive focused on quarterly returns. Her assessment aligned perfectly with what I'd been thinking. The resort is at a crossroads, I agreed. The North Ridge development isn't just an expansion. It's a declaration of what Eagle Crest will become. Sophia nodded. Exactly. And right now, Nathan's vision is winning by default because there's no compelling alternative. The implications hung between us. Before I could respond, movement at the cafe entrance caught my attention. Nathan had just walked in with Elise Hammond, both dressed in elegant casual wear that screamed effortless wealth. They hadn't noticed us yet. Don't react, I murmured to Sophia. Nathan and Elise just arrived. Sophia kept her expression neutral. Do you want to leave? There's a staff exit through the kitchen. I considered it briefly, then shook my head. No, running would just reinforce whatever narrative Nathan's been spinning. I straightened in my chair, adjusting my posture to project confidence. Besides, this might be informative. Nathan spotted us a moment later, his smooth stride faltering briefly before he recovered. He murmured something to Elise, whose gaze flicked to our table with undisguised curiosity. After a brief discussion, they changed direction and approached us. Rebecca, Nathan greeted me with the perfect mix of surprise and concern. I didn't expect to see you here today. I thought we agreed you'd have your assistant collect your things. We'd agreed to no such thing, but I matched his calm tone. I preferred to handle it personally. Hello, Elise. It's been a while. Elise Hammond, tall and poised with her father's confident bearing, offered a practiced smile. Rebecca, I'm sorry about your situation. These transitions can be difficult. The condescension was subtle but unmistakable. I maintained my composure. Some more than others. But difficulty often reveals opportunity, don't you find? Nathan's eyes narrowed slightly. We won't keep you from your recovery. I just wanted to ensure you received everything from the cabin. Almost everything, I replied pleasantly, though I noticed some financial documents seemed to be missing from my home office there. A flash of something, concern, annoyance, crossed Nathan's face. I had those transferred to our Denver house for safekeeping. Estate planning requires careful documentation, as I'm sure you understand. The implication that I couldn't be trusted with financial documents was clear. I smiled thinly. Of course. Speaking of planning, I hear congratulations are in order. The managing partnership vote has been moved up? Nathan and Elise exchanged glances. Resort business evolves quickly, Elise responded smoothly. Dad's always emphasized adaptability. Indeed, I agreed, though thorough assessment usually produces better outcomes than rushed decisions. I turned to Nathan, particularly regarding soil stability assessments for major construction projects. The slight widening of his eyes confirmed Diana's information had substance. I wasn't aware you had developed expertise in resort development, Rebecca, he replied, his tone hardening. I've developed expertise in recognizing when details matter, I countered. But don't let us keep you. I'm sure you have pressing business to discuss. After another moment of tense silence, Nathan placed his hand on Elise's back. We do, actually. Enjoy your coffee. As they moved to a table across the cafe, Sophia raised an eyebrow. That was interesting. What was that about? Soil assessments? I explained what Diana had discovered about the North Ridge development concerns. Sophia's expression grew troubled. If they're cutting corners on safety assessments, that's serious, she said quietly. The North Ridge area has had minor slides in the past. Nothing catastrophic, but enough that extensive testing should be standard procedure. Do you know who would have those historical records? Sophia thought for a moment. The engineering department would have digital files, but access is restricted. However, Victor's personal assistant, Margaret, has been here almost as long as he has. She archives everything, and she's no fan of Nathan's. This was potentially useful. Do you think Margaret would speak with me? Possibly, Sophia said, cautiously. She's very protective of Victor, but she's also deeply committed to the resort's well-being. If she believed Nathan was pushing a potentially dangerous development. She hesitated. What exactly are you planning, Rebecca? I considered how much to reveal. Sophia had proven trustworthy, but the fewer people who knew my full intentions, the better. Let's just say I'm exploring options that would ensure Eagle Crest's long-term stability, I said carefully. Options that might not align with Nathan's current plans. Sophia studied me for a moment, then nodded. I'll speak with Margaret. No promises, but I'll try to arrange a conversation. We finished our coffee, discussing resort operations and the upcoming season's bookings. The information helped flesh out my understanding of Eagle Crest's current position in the market. As we prepared to leave, I noticed Nathan and Elise deep in conversation, occasionally glancing our way. One last thing, Sophia said as we walked toward the exit. The pre-vote dinner tomorrow night at the Hammond Lake House? Victor invited the heads of all departments. I could bring a +1 if you're interested. The audacity of the suggestion made me smile. Wouldn't that be rather awkward for everyone involved? Sophia's answering smile held a hint of mischief. Precisely. Sometimes awkward situations reveal important truths. She handed me her card with a number written on the back. My personal cell. Think about it and let me know. After we parted ways, I drove to the storage facility on the edge of town. The unit contained neatly packed boxes of clothing, books, and personal items. My life with Nathan, efficiently categorized and removed. I spent an hour identifying what I needed immediately, then arranged for the rest to be delivered to my Denver loft later. As I loaded several boxes into my car, I reflected on the day's developments. Nathan was moving aggressively toward his goal, but there were cracks in his presentation. Questions about the development projections, potential safety issues, and committee members who weren't fully convinced. My phone rang as I closed the trunk, Diana calling for an update. The soil stability concerns definitely hit a nerve, I told her, sliding into the driver's seat. And I may have access to historical records that could provide more details. That's potentially valuable, Diana replied. I've been working on the business plan framework. There's something else you should know. Nathan's filed the divorce papers already. They were delivered to your loft about an hour ago. I wasn't surprised, but the speed still stung. On what grounds? Irreconcilable differences. The settlement offer is attached. Superficially generous, but structured to minimize actual cash transfer. He's offering the Denver house and a lump sum, but retaining all interest in Eagle Crest and his investment firm. Of course he is, I said, starting the car. Forward everything to me. I'll review it tonight. After ending the call, I sat for a moment considering my next move. Nathan had accelerated everything. The partnership vote, the divorce filing, the narrative that I was unstable. He was attempting to present the board with a fait accompli on Monday, a clean personal break and a clear business vision, with Elise Hammond providing the Blackwood family's implicit endorsement. I turned the car not toward Denver, but back, toward Eagle Crest Resort. There was one more conversation I needed to have before leaving. Victor Blackwood had known me for 6 years, not just as Nathan's wife, but as someone who had contributed significantly to resort events and guest experiences. Before Nathan's version of events became the only one, I wanted Victor to hear directly from me. The resort owner's direct line phone number was still in my contacts. I pulled into a scenic overlook and made the call, mentally preparing for rejection. To my surprise, Victor answered personally. "Rebecca," he said, his voice cautious but not unwelcoming. "This is unexpected. I apologize for the direct approach, Victor, but I hoped we might speak briefly. In person, if possible." A pause. "I'm not sure that would be appropriate under the circumstances." "The circumstances being what Nathan has told you," I said quietly. "I'm simply asking for 10 minutes to provide my perspective before Monday's board meeting." Another, longer pause. "You're still in Aspen Grove?" "Yes, just finishing at the storage facility." "I see." He sounded tired suddenly. "I have a meeting ending at 4. Come to my office afterward. Use the private entrance by the north garden. Margaret will let you in." The call ended before I could thank him. I checked the time, just after 2, giving me a little over an hour before needing to be at Victor's office. I used that time to organize my thoughts, preparing to make the most of this unexpected opportunity. At exactly 4, I presented myself at the discreet entrance Victor had specified. Margaret, his longtime assistant, opened the door with a neutral expression that revealed nothing of her thoughts. "Ms. Miller," she greeted me, "Mr. Blackwood will see you shortly. Please wait here." The private reception area was tastefully appointed with photographs documenting Eagle Crest's history, from its origins as a small family ski lodge to the luxury resort it had become under Victor's leadership. I studied these images, noting the progression and the consistent vision that had guided its development. After 10 minutes, Margaret returned. "Mr. Blackwood will see you now." Victor's office reflected his personality, traditional yet comfortable, with spectacular mountain views and subtle displays of his achievements. He rose from behind his desk as I entered, gesturing to a seating area by the fireplace rather than maintaining the power dynamic of his desk. "Rebecca," he said as we sat, "this is an uncomfortable situation for everyone." "I appreciate you seeing me despite that," I replied. "I'll be direct. I assume Nathan has provided his version of our separation and its causes." Victor's expression remained carefully neutral. "He has indicated that there have been concerning behaviors on your part, emotional instability, difficulties with your business. He's expressed worry about your well-being." The calculated cruelty of Nathan's approach was breathtaking. I maintained my composure. "That's a convenient narrative, but entirely false. My business is thriving, as our joint tax returns would confirm. As for emotional stability, I believe what you witnessed at dinner was shock at being blindsided by a public announcement of divorce." Victor had the grace to look uncomfortable. "These situations are rarely simple. Both parties typically contribute to the breakdown." "I won't dispute that our marriage had challenges," I acknowledged. "What I take issue with is the deliberate destruction of my professional reputation to facilitate Nathan's ambitions here at Eagle Crest." Victor's eyes sharpened. "That's a serious accusation. No more serious than suggesting I'm having a Mental breakdown, I countered. Victor, we've known each other for 6 years. You've seen my work firsthand. The charity gala last winter, the conservation fundraiser, numerous owner events. Did any of those suggest professional incompetence to you? No, he admitted. Your event execution has always been impeccable. Then perhaps question why Nathan would suddenly claim otherwise, just as he's positioning himself for the managing partnership. I leaned forward slightly. And perhaps ask yourself why he's pushing so aggressively to break ground on the North Ridge development without completing standard safety assessments. Victor's surprise suggested this was news to him. What safety assessments? Soil stability tests, I replied. The preliminary reports indicated potential concerns that warranted further investigation. Nathan's firm advised against additional testing to keep the project on schedule. Victor's expression darkened. That's not something I've been made aware of. I thought that might be the case. I held his gaze steadily. Victor, I didn't come here to attack Nathan or disrupt resort business. I came because I care deeply about Eagle Crest and its future. Before you make decisions that will shape that future, I wanted to ensure you had complete information. Victor studied me for a long moment. What exactly are you hoping to achieve? Here, Rebecca. It was the same question Jacob had asked, but in a different context. I considered my answer carefully. Justice would be nice, I admitted. But more practically, I want to ensure Eagle Crest's development proceeds with appropriate care and consideration. This resort represents your legacy, Victor. It would be tragic to see that legacy compromised by rushed decisions. He nodded, slowly, looking suddenly older than his 65 years. These concerns about the soil testing, can you provide documentation? I can have it delivered to you this evening, I promised, making a mental note to contact Diana immediately. Victor rose, signaling our meeting was concluding. I appreciate your directness, Rebecca. It stands in contrast to some of what I've been hearing. I stood as well. That's partly why I wanted to speak with you personally. As I turned to leave, Victor added, The Hammond Lake House dinner tomorrow. I understand Sophia has invited you as her guest. This surprised me. News traveled quickly in the resort community. She suggested it, I acknowledged. I haven't decided if that would be helpful or merely disruptive. Victor's expression was unreadable. Eagle Crest's future is being decided. Those with genuine concern for that future should be present for the discussion. He extended his hand. Whatever happens between you and Nathan is regrettable, but ultimately private. The resort's well-being, however, affects many lives. I trust you'll remember that. I shook his hand, recognizing both the subtle warning and the implicit permission in his words. I always have, Victor. As I drove back to Denver that evening, I reflected on the day's developments. Nathan was moving quickly, but perhaps not as carefully as he believed. There were questions about the financial projections, concerns about the development safety, and now a direct line of communication with Victor Blackwood. The divorce papers were waiting at my loft as Diana had warned. I reviewed them carefully, noting the calculated generosity of the settlement offer. Nathan was offering terms that would appear fair to outside observers while ensuring I had no ongoing connection to his primary assets, particularly Eagle Crest. I called Diana to update her on my conversations with Sophia and Victor. This changes our approach, she said when I finished. If Victor has concerns about the development safety, that creates leverage we didn't previously have. Exactly, I agreed. Can you compile the soil testing information for Victor tonight? Already on it, Diana confirmed. What about tomorrow's dinner at the Hammond Lake House? Are you going? I thought about the potential for awkwardness, confrontation, and possible professional damage. I also thought about Nathan's expression when I'd mentioned the soil testing, the momentary flash of concern before his confident mask returned. Yes, I decided. I think Rebecca Miller should definitely make an appearance at the pre-vote dinner. After all, I've been part of the Eagle Crest community for years. It would be strange not to take an interest in its future. Diana's laugh held a note of admiration. You're either incredibly brave or slightly crazy. Maybe both, I admitted. But Nathan doesn't get to simply erase me from a world I helped build. Not without a fight. After we ended the call, I opened my laptop and began working on a presentation of my own, not for the dinner tomorrow, but for Jacob Harrison on Monday. If I was going to seriously pursue an investment in Eagle Crest, I needed a comprehensive business plan that addressed both the immediate debt concerns and the longer term. The Hammond Lake House stood like a modern fortress of glass and stone overlooking the pristine waters of Lake Aspen. As Sophia drove us up the winding private road, golden light spilled from oversized windows, illuminating the collection of luxury vehicles already parked in the circular driveway. Range Rovers, Mercedes, and at least one Bentley gleamed under subtle landscape lighting. Second thoughts? Sophia asked, noting my silence as we approached. No, I replied, smoothing my navy silk dress. Just mentally preparing for what promises to be an interesting evening. Sophia grinned as she parked her Audi among the luxury fleet. That's one way to put it. Half the resort leadership still doesn't know what to make of your separation from Nathan. Your presence tonight will certainly give them something to talk about. Let's hope it gives them something to think about as well, I said, reaching for the folder I'd brought containing selected information about the Northridge development. Concerns. The Hammond Estates entryway soared 2 stories high with a dramatic chandelier that resembled falling snowflakes. A staff member directed us to the main gathering in the lake-facing great room, where approximately 30 people stood in conversational clusters, crystal glasses in hand. My entrance with Sophia created an immediate ripple effect. Conversations paused briefly, glances were exchanged, and a subtle repositioning occurred as people calculated how to respond to my unexpected presence. I kept my posture relaxed and confident, refusing to broadcast any hint of discomfort. Victor Blackwood noticed us first, detaching himself from a conversation with 2 board members to approach us directly. Sophia, Rebecca, he greeted us with perfect professional courtesy. Thank you for coming. The caterers have outdone themselves with the appetizers. I particularly recommend the seared scallops. His deliberate normalization of my presence sent a clear message to the room. Whatever Nathan might have implied about my stability or standing, Victor Blackwood was treating me as a welcome guest. Thank you for the recommendation, Victor, I replied warmly. The lake house looks beautiful. This evening, Elise has been overseeing renovations, he acknowledged, glancing toward his daughter, who stood across the room in animated conversation with Nathan and Trevor Wilson. She has her mother's eye for design. Before we could continue, Elise herself noticed our group and approached, her expression a careful mask of hostess graciousness. Nathan, I noted, remained where he was, though his attention had clearly shifted to my arrival. Sophia, lovely to see you, Elise greeted, air-kissing her cheek before turning to me with perfect poise. Rebecca, I wasn't aware you would be joining us tonight. Sophia was kind enough to include me, I replied pleasantly. I've always appreciated your family's hospitality, and I remain deeply invested in Eagle Crest's future. Elise's perfectly sculpted eyebrow arched slightly. Of course, although I understood from Nathan that you were focusing on your recovery in Denver. I met her gaze directly, maintaining my smile. Nathan seems to have misunderstood my plans. My business requires my full attention, naturally, but I would never miss an opportunity to support Eagle Crest during such an important transition period. Victor cut in smoothly. Rebecca's event expertise has been valuable to the resort over the years. Her perspective tonight is most welcome. He gestured toward the terrace doors. Dinner will be served shortly. Shall we make our way to the table? As we moved toward the dining area, I felt Nathan's eyes following me. I deliberately avoided looking in his direction, denying him the satisfaction of my acknowledgement. Instead, I engaged an older board member in conversation about the upcoming ski season projections. The dining room featured a massive table crafted from reclaimed barnwood, set elegantly with fine china and crystal beneath a panoramic view of the moonlit lake. Place cards directed the seating arrangement. I discovered mine beside Sophia and across from Marcus Reynolds, the resort's CFO, who had always been friendly during my time with Nathan. As we took our seats, I noted that Nathan was positioned near the head of the table beside Elise, with Victor at the actual head, a power arrangement that telegraphed the expected succession while maintaining current hierarchies. Rebecca, Marcus E., greeted me with genuine warmth as we settled in. "It's been too long. How is Mile High Events faring this season?" "Thriving, thank you," I replied as servers poured wine. "We've expanded our corporate retreat offerings, which has proven quite successful. Companies are increasingly seeking experiences beyond traditional conference settings." "Fascinating," he said, leaning forward with interest. "We've been discussing how to increase corporate bookings during shoulder seasons. Perhaps we should compare notes sometime." I was about to respond when Nathan's voice carried down the table. "Marcus, I believe you'll find the Northridge development addresses those very concerns. The new conference facilities will specifically target corporate clients." Marcus turned toward Nathan with a polite nod. "Yes, I've reviewed the projections, though I still have questions about the occupancy assumptions during April and October." Nathan's smile remained fixed. "The financial models have been thoroughly vetted by Summit partners. I'd be happy to walk you through the methodology after dinner." "Speaking of the Northridge development," Victor interjected, commanding the table's attention, "I received some concerning information yesterday regarding the preliminary soil assessments. It seems more comprehensive testing was recommended, but not completed." A brief but noticeable silence fell over the table. Nathan's expression flickered momentarily before settling into confident dismissal. "A minor procedural recommendation that was deemed unnecessary after our engineers reviewed the historical data," he explained smoothly. "The additional testing would have delayed groundbreaking by months for what amounts to an abundance of caution." "When it comes to guest safety, is there such thing as an abundance of caution?" I asked, my voice carrying clearly in the quiet room. All eyes turned to me as I continued, especially given the minor slides recorded in that area in 1998 and again in 2012. Nathan's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "I wasn't aware you had engineering expertise, Rebecca." "I don't," I acknowledged, pleasantly. "But I do have expertise in risk assessment for large-scale events. The first rule is always to acquire complete information before proceeding, especially when safety is concerned." Victor nodded thoughtfully. "A sensible approach. I've requested the additional testing be completed before we finalize any construction commitments." Nathan glanced at Elise, who jumped in smoothly. "Dad, that will push the entire timeline back significantly. The investment partners are expecting us to break ground this spring. And they'll understand the need for due diligence," Victor replied firmly. "Eagle Crest's reputation is built on excellence and attention to detail. We won't compromise that for expediency." The first course arrived, temporarily shifting conversation to safer topics, but I could feel the tension emanating from Nathan's end of the table. He recovered quickly, engaging nearby board members in discussions of projected revenue increases, but his occasional glances in my direction revealed simmering frustration. Midway through the main course, Trevor Wilson directed a question my way, his tone deceptively casual. "Rebecca, I understand you're staying in Denver now. Will you be maintaining your connections to Aspen Grove? It must be difficult, given the circumstances." The implied message was clear. I didn't belong here anymore. I dabbed my lips with my napkin before responding. "My professional relationships in Aspen Grove remain strong, I replied. In fact, I've been exploring expanded opportunities in the area. Luxury hospitality is evolving rapidly, and there's tremendous untapped potential in this market. Nathan's fork paused halfway to his mouth. Expanded opportunities? That sounds ambitious for a boutique event planning business. I met his gaze directly for the first time that evening. Mile-high events has always been just the foundation, Nathan. You of all people should appreciate the importance of diversification and strategic growth. Marcus chuckled appreciatively. Well, said, the hospitality sector certainly needs fresh perspectives. The traditional resort model is facing unprecedented challenges, which is precisely why the Northridge development is so crucial, Elise interjected. It represents exactly the kind of innovation the market demands. Innovation requires more than new buildings, I countered gently. It requires understanding what today's luxury travelers truly value: authentic experiences, personalization, and meaningful connections to place and purpose. Victor nodded thoughtfully. Rebecca has a point. The physical expansion addresses capacity issues, but guest experience remains our core product. The conversation continued around the table, with various department heads offering perspectives on resort operations and future direction. I contributed selectively, carefully establishing myself not as Nathan's bitter ex, but as a knowledgeable industry professional with relevant insights. As dessert was served, Victor rose to address the group more formally. Tomorrow's board meeting represents a significant moment in Eagle Crest's history. For 25 years, I've had the privilege of guiding this resort's growth and evolution. The time has come to consider new leadership for our next chapter. He paused, surveying the attentive faces around the table. Nathan has presented a compelling vision for expansion and financial growth. His partnership proposal will be formally reviewed tomorrow, along with the associated development plans for the Northridge property. Nathan nodded confidently, raising his glass slightly in acknowledgement. However, Victor continued, recent information suggests we may need to extend our deliberation period to ensure all aspects of this transition are thoroughly evaluated. Our responsibility to our shareholders, our staff, and our guests demands nothing less than complete due diligence. Nathan's expression remained controlled, but I caught the flash of concern in his eyes. He had clearly expected Victor's unqualified endorsement tonight, paving the way for tomorrow's vote to be a mere formality. What kind of extension are you suggesting, Victor? Asked Josephine Winters, the longest-serving board member. 2 weeks, Victor replied. Time to complete the additional geological assessments for the Northridge project and to fully evaluate the financial projections under various market scenarios. The capital markets won't wait forever, Nathan noted, his tone carefully respectful but with an underlying edge. The funding package we've arranged is time-sensitive. Delays risk losing favorable terms. If the investment thesis is sound, 2 weeks shouldn't materially impact the terms, Marcus observed mildly. Personally, I appreciate the thoroughness. This is the most significant decision the board has faced in over a decade. After dinner concluded, guests moved back to the great room for coffee and digestives. I circulated carefully, engaging in brief conversations that reinforced my professional standing while avoiding direct interaction with Nathan. The dynamics were fascinating to observe, some board members clearly distancing themselves from me, others making deliberate efforts to include me in discussions. Victor found me by the fireplace as the evening was winding down. You've handled a difficult situation with remarkable grace, he noted quietly. Practice from years of managing awkward client dynamics, I replied with a small smile. Thank you for creating space for me tonight. I know it wasn't without risk. He studied me thoughtfully. You influenced the discussion in ways Nathan clearly wasn't expecting. The soil testing concerns in particular seemed to catch him off guard. Information is powerful when properly applied, I acknowledged. I simply believe everyone should have complete facts before making decisions that affect Eagle Crest's future. Victor nodded slowly. Indeed, though I suspect your interest goes beyond merely providing information. His gaze was shrewd but not unfriendly. Nathan isn't the only one with ambitious plans, is he? I met his gaze steadily. Let's just say I'm exploring options that align with my expertise and interests. Options that might benefit Eagle Crest in ways Nathan's approach doesn't address. Intriguing, Victor murmured. Perhaps we should continue this conversation after tomorrow's board meeting. Say, Tuesday morning at my office? I maintained a neutral expression despite my surprise at this unexpected opening. I'd welcome that opportunity. As Sophia and I prepared to leave, Nathan finally approached, maneuvering to catch me alone near the coat room. That was quite a performance, he said, his voice low but intense. Though I'm not sure what you hope to accomplish beyond creating unnecessary complications. I buttoned my coat unhurriedly. I merely provided relevant information about safety. Concerns. Isn't that what any responsible member of the Eagle Crest community would do? You're not a member of this community anymore, Rebecca, he said coldly. That ended when our marriage did. Whatever game you're playing, showing up here, undermining the development plans, attempting to ingratiate yourself with Victor, it won't work. I met his gaze calmly. Not a game, Nathan. Just a recognition that you don't get to unilaterally decide my place in a community I've been part of for 6 years. Especially when that decision is based on lies about my professional competence and mental stability. His expression hardened. The divorce settlement is more than generous. Take it and move on with your life, preferably somewhere other than Aspen Grove. I'll certainly give the settlement offer the consideration it deserves, I replied evenly. As for moving on, I intend to. Just not in the direction you've prescribed. Something in my tone must have alerted him that I wasn't simply being defiant. His eyes narrowed slightly. What exactly are you planning? Exploring options, I echoed my words to Victor. Something you taught me the importance of, if you recall. I stepped past him toward the door where Sophia waited. Enjoy your evening, Nathan. Best of luck at tomorrow's board meeting. In the car driving back to Sophia's condo where I'd be spending the night, I felt a curious mixture of exhaustion and exhilaration. The evening had been a careful high-wire act, establishing my continued relevance without appearing vindictive, raising legitimate concerns about the development without seeming obstructionist, and most importantly, laying groundwork for what might come next. You were brilliant, Sophia declared as we turned onto the main road. The way you handled the soil testing issue was perfect, focused on resort safety rather than Nathan personally. Even Elise seemed impressed, though she'd never admit it. Victor's decision to delay the vote changes everything, I observed, replaying the evening's key moments. Nathan was counting on momentum carrying his proposal through tomorrow without serious challenge. Absolutely, Sophia agreed. And now he has 2 weeks of increased scrutiny and more detailed questions to navigate. She glanced at me curiously. Victor suggested a private meeting with you? Tuesday morning, I confirmed, though I'm not entirely sure what he has in mind. Victor doesn't waste time on social niceties, Sophia noted. If he's requested a meeting, he sees potential value in your perspective. She hesitated before adding, or he's concerned about what you might be planning and wants to assess the situation directly. I smiled slightly. Perhaps both. Later that night, after Sophia had gone to bed, I sat on her guest room balcony overlooking the mountains, updating Diana and Jacob via conference call. The delay is significant, Jacob assessed after hearing my account of the evening. It creates a window for alternative proposals to enter consideration. Exactly, I agreed. Nathan's pitch relied heavily on being the only viable option presented, with time pressure forcing a quick decision. "What about Victor's invitation to meet?" Diana asked. "How does that affect our timeline?" I considered this carefully. It accelerates everything. If Victor is genuinely open to alternatives, we need to be ready with our proposal by Tuesday morning. That's barely more than 48 hours to finalize a multi-million-dollar investment plan, Diana cautioned. "We've done the foundational work," I reminded her. "The core business strategy is solid. We just need to refine the financing structure and implementation timeline." Jacob's voice conveyed both skepticism and intrigue. "I've reviewed your preliminary plan. The vision for repositioning Eagle Crest is compelling, but the capital requirements are substantial. Are you certain you want to proceed at this pace?" "Nathan has given me no choice," I replied, watching moonlight glint off distant snowcaps. "He's attempting to erase me from a community and business I care deeply about, while simultaneously pushing through a development plan with serious safety concerns. If I wait, both may become irreversible." After a moment's consideration, Jacob said, "I'll have my team work through the night on the financial modeling. By tomorrow afternoon, we should have a clearer picture of what Alpine Ventures can commit to." "I'll focus on the legal framework," Diana added, "particularly the structure for addressing Eagle Crest's immediate debt concerns while establishing your management role." We continued refining details until well after midnight. When we finally ended the call, I remained on the balcony, contemplating how dramatically my life had changed in just 3 days. From shell-shocked spouse facing public humiliation to potential resort investor developing an alternative business plan that might fundamentally alter Eagle Crest's future. My phone buzzed with a text from Melissa. "How did the dinner go? Still coming to Denver tomorrow?" I had almost forgotten my plan to return to Denver in the morning to prepare for Monday's meeting with Jacob's investment team. Events were moving so rapidly that plans made just 24 hours ago already seemed outdated. "Dinner successful," I texted back. "Change of plans, staying in Aspen Grove to prepare for meeting with Victor Blackwood Tuesday. We'll explain everything soon." Sleep came fitfully that night, my mind racing with calculations, scenarios, and contingency plans. By dawn, I was already awake and reviewing notes when my phone rang, Diana calling with unexpected news. "The board meeting has been moved up," she said without preamble. 9 o'clock this morning instead of tomorrow." I sat up, instantly, alert. "How did you learn this?" "One of my paralegals is dating someone in resort management," Diana explained. Apparently, Nathan called an emergency session after last night's dinner, citing time-sensitive financial considerations that cannot wait. This was a classic Nathan move. When facing opposition, change the battlefield to regain advantage. By accelerating the timeline, he hoped to force a decision before the additional soil testing could be completed and before Victor's concerns could solidify into actual resistance. "He's panicking," I realized aloud. "Last night didn't go according to his script, so he's trying to force closure before anyone can develop alternatives." "Exactly," Diana agreed. "But it also means we've lost our preparation window." "What's your plan?" I checked the time, 6:47 a.m. The board meeting would begin in just over 2 hours. "I need to reach Victor immediately. Nathan's attempting an end run around the extended deliberation period Victor proposed last night." After ending the call with Diana, I quickly dressed in a business-appropriate outfit I'd fortunately packed, then tried Victor's direct line. No answer. I left a brief message explaining what I'd learned about the rescheduled meeting, then tried Margaret's number, which Sophia had provided. Margaret answered on the second ring, her voice crisp despite the early hour. "Mrs. Miller, this is unexpected." "Margaret, I apologize for calling so early, but it's urgent I speak with Victor. I understand Nathan has rescheduled the board meeting for this morning." Her slight pause confirmed this information was correct. "Mr. Blackwood is preparing for the session now. He's unavailable for calls." Please tell him I have information directly relevant to the meeting. Information about why Nathan is rushing the vote and what he's attempting to conceal from the board. Another pause, longer this time. One moment. I waited anxiously, aware that each passing minute reduced my window for influencing today's critical decision. Finally, Margaret returned to the line. Mr. Blackwood will see you in his office at 8:15, immediately before the meeting. He says to use the private entrance again and to bring any documentation you reference. Thank you, Margaret. I'll be there. I hurried to wake Sophia, explaining the situation as she quickly transitioned from sleep to alert concern. Nathan's outmaneuvering us, she observed, pulling on a robe. The board members from out of town are staying at the resort. He's probably been lobbying them individually since last night. Exactly, I agreed, gathering my materials. Can you get me to Victor's office by 8:15? Better, Sophia replied, already reaching for her phone. I can get you documents that will substantiate your concerns about the North Ridge project from the resort's own engineering archives. While Sophia made calls, I contacted Jacob, updating him on the accelerated timeline. We've lost our preparation window, I explained. The board is voting this morning. Jacob processed this information with the speed of a seasoned investor. Then we need to change our approach. Rather than presenting a fully formed alternative immediately, your goal should be to prevent them from committing to Nathan's plan. Create space for our proposal to be properly considered, I agreed. Exactly. Focus on legitimate concerns about the current plan that warrant further exploration. Victor already supports extending the deliberation period. You just need to give the board sufficient reason to agree with him despite Nathan's pressure tactics. By 8 a.m., Sophia and I were in her car heading toward the resort, a folder of engineering documents on my lap, showing historical slide patterns in the North Ridge area. I had also received an email from Jacob containing financial analysis of Eagle Crest's debt structure, highlighting vulnerabilities in Nathan's funding approach. Nathan will try to paint you as a vengeful ex-wife, Sophia warned as we approached the resort. He'll dismiss your concerns as personally motivated regardless of their merit. I know, I replied, reviewing my notes one final time. Which is why every point I make will be backed by documentation from the resort's own records or independent financial analysis. The resort was quietly bustling with early morning activity, staff preparing for the day, early risers heading to breakfast or the slopes. We used the staff entrance to avoid the main lobby, then took a service corridor to the administrative wing where Victor's office was located. Margaret was waiting at the private entrance, her expression professionally neutral. Mr. Blackwood is expecting you. You have 15 minutes before he needs to join the board. She led me to Victor's office, where the resort founder sat reviewing documents at his desk. He looked up as I entered, his expression guarded but not unwelcoming. Rebecca, he greeted me, gesturing to the chair across from his desk. Margaret says you have information about Nathan's motivations for accelerating the vote. I took the seat, placing my folder on the desk between us. Thank you for seeing me, Victor. Yes, I believe Nathan is attempting to force a decision before certain information becomes widely known among the board members. Victor leaned back, studying me. What information? I opened the folder, revealing the engineering documents Sophia had provided. First, these are historical geological surveys of the North Ridge area, conducted after minor slides in 1998 and 2012. They establish a pattern of soil instability that the current assessment doesn't adequately address. Victor examined the documents with a frown. These should have been included in the development prospectus. They were deliberately omitted, I stated. Nathan's investment firm specifically instructed the engineering team to focus only on current assessments, not historical patterns. Victor's frown deepened. That's troubling. What else? I presented the financial analysis Jacob had provided. The funding structure Nathan has proposed for the development creates significant Leverage risk for Eagle Crest. If occupancy projections aren't met, which seasonal patterns suggest is likely, the resort could face a critical cash flow shortage by fourth quarter 2026. Victor studied the numbers carefully. These projections differ substantially from what Nathan presented, because Nathan's models use best-case assumptions across all variables, I explained. This analysis applies historical performance patterns to the same growth model. Victor set down the documents and looked at me directly. Rebecca, these concerns are legitimate and warrant careful consideration. But I must ask, what is your objective here? Beyond preventing Nathan from potentially making missteps in resort development? It was the moment of truth. I met his gaze steadily. I believe Eagle Crest deserves leadership that prioritizes guest experience and long-term sustainability over rapid expansion and financial engineering. I'm developing an alternative vision for the resort's future, one that addresses the debt challenges while creating a more distinctive luxury experience aligned with evolving market demands. Victor's eyebrows rose slightly. You're proposing to take a management role at Eagle Crest? I'm proposing much more than that, I replied calmly. I'm working with investment partners to develop a comprehensive refinancing and repositioning strategy. We're prepared to address the resort's $24 million debt obligation, while implementing a development approach that emphasizes quality over mere expansion. Victor studied me with new interest. That's unexpected and ambitious. No more ambitious than building Eagle Crest from a family ski lodge into a world-class resort, I countered. You did that by understanding what luxury travelers truly valued, not by simply copying existing models. The resort needs that same innovative thinking now. Victor glanced at his watch. The board is gathering. What specifically are you asking? Of me today? Only that you maintain your position on extending the deliberation period, I replied. Give me until Tuesday morning to present a fully developed alternative for the board's consideration, one that addresses the financial concerns without compromising safety or guest experience. Victor considered this request, then nodded slowly. I believe the board deserves to consider all viable options before committing to a course that will define Eagle Crest's future for decades to come. He gathered the documents I'd provided. With your permission, I'll share these concerns during today's discussion. Of course, I agreed, rising as he did. Thank you for your consideration, Victor. As we walked toward the boardroom, Victor asked quietly, Does Nathan know about your alternative proposal? Not yet, I admitted. Though after this morning, I suspect he'll begin to understand that his path forward isn't as clear as he believed. Victor's slight smile suggested he found this situation more intriguing than troubling. The next 48 hours should prove quite interesting. The board was already seated when Victor entered, with me following a step behind. My unexpected presence created an immediate stir, particularly from Nathan, whose composed expression momentarily fractured into naked surprise before he regained control. Good morning, Victor greeted the room. Before we begin, I want to thank Rebecca Miller for bringing some pertinent information to my attention regarding the North Ridge development. Since this directly relates to our discussions today, I've invited her to briefly address the board. Nathan immediately objected. With all due respect, Victor, Mrs. Miller has no official role at Eagle Crest. Her presence at a confidential board meeting is highly irregular, particularly given the personal circumstances. Victor regarded him calmly. Mrs. Miller has been involved with resort operations and events for 6 years. Her insights have proven valuable to our guest experience initiatives. I believe the board will benefit from hearing her perspective before making any binding decisions. Josephine Winters, the senior board member, nodded her agreement. I see no harm in additional information, particularly regarding a project of this magnitude. Nathan could hardly object further without appearing obstructionist. He settled, back in his chair, his expression carefully neutral. though his eyes followed me with cold intensity. For the next 15 minutes, I presented the geological and financial concerns I'd shared with Victor, keeping my tone professional and my focus squarely on the resort's well-being rather than Nathan personally. I concluded by suggesting that a brief extension of the deliberation period would allow for more comprehensive assessment without materially impacting the development timeline. "Thank you, Mrs. Miller," Victor said when I finished. "The board appreciates your diligence in bringing these matters to our attention." He turned to the group. "In light of this information, I propose we maintain our original schedule, with the formal vote occurring in 2 weeks after additional assessment can be completed." Nathan immediately countered. "While I appreciate the concerns raised, I must emphasize that the financing package we've secured is time-sensitive. Any delay risks the preferential terms we've negotiated." "Surely terms negotiated for a sound project would remain available for 2 additional weeks of due diligence," Marcus observed mildly. "Unless there are aspects of the financing that depend on limited disclosure." It was a pointed question that placed Nathan in an awkward position. Either the financing was robust enough to withstand brief scrutiny, or it was structured in a way that might not bear closer examination. The discussion continued for another 20 minutes, with board members weighing the timing concerns against the legitimate issues I'd raised. Throughout, Nathan worked to minimize the significance of the geological data while emphasizing the urgency of moving forward immediately. Finally, Victor called for a preliminary vote on extending the deliberation period. To Nathan's visible dismay, the motion carried 7-3, with only his closest allies on the board opposing the delay. "Then it's settled," Victor announced. "We will reconvene in 2 weeks for a final decision after reviewing the additional geological assessments and financial projections." He turned to me. "Thank you again for your input, Rebecca. The board would welcome any further insights you might wish to share during our extended review period." As the meeting concluded, I exchanged brief pleasantries with several board members before making my way toward the exit. Nathan intercepted me in the hallway outside, his controlled demeanor masking barely contained fury. "Quite the performance," he said quietly, guiding me toward a side alcove away from departing board members. "Though I'm curious what you think. You've accomplished beyond a minor delay." I maintained a professional smile for anyone who might observe us. Perhaps I simply believe Eagle Crest deserves the most thorough evaluation of its options before committing to a specific direction. "This isn't about Eagle Crest," Nathan replied, his voice hardening. "This is about you not accepting that your role here is finished. I offered you a generous settlement, the Denver house, financial support, a clean break. Instead, you're creating complications that benefit no one. No one except the resort guests who won't have their accommodations built on unstable ground," I countered. "Or the shareholders who might prefer a financing structure that doesn't place the entire operation at risk if winter bookings fall short of your optimistic projections." Something in my tone must have alerted him that my concerns went beyond mere obstructionism. His eyes narrowed slightly. "You mentioned options just now. What exactly are you planning, Rebecca?" "You taught me the importance of strategic positioning, Nathan," I replied. "Consider this a practical application of those lessons." His expression hardened. "Whatever you're attempting won't work. The board may have granted a 2-week extension, but the outcome remains inevitable. I've spent years building relationships with these people while you planned parties." The dismissive characterization of my work might have stung once. Now it merely confirmed how fundamentally Nathan had underestimated me, a miscalculation I intended to use to my advantage. "We'll see," I said simply, stepping away from him. "Enjoy your 2 weeks of additional preparation, Nathan. I certainly intend to make good use of mine." As I walked away, I heard him call after me, "This isn't a game you can win, Rebecca." I didn't turn back, but allowed myself a small smile. Nathan was right about one thing. This wasn't a game. It was a business opportunity he had inadvertently created through his own arrogance and miscalculation. And while he saw me as merely an inconvenience to be managed, I was rapidly becoming something far more dangerous, a legitimate threat to his carefully constructed plans. Outside, Sophia was waiting by her car. "How did it go?" she asked as I approached. "The board approved the 2-week extension," I replied, sliding into the passenger seat. "Nathan is displeased." Sophia grinned as she started the engine. "I bet that's putting it mildly. What now?" I checked my watch. Not yet 10 a.m., and already the day felt momentous. Now we drive to Denver. I have approximately 48 hours to finalize the most important business proposal of my career. The sleek conference room at Alpine Ventures hummed with focused energy as I stood before the investment committee, the culmination of a frantic 36 hours of preparation displayed on the screen behind me. Jacob Harrison sat at the head of the table, his expression deliberately neutral as he observed my presentation to his team of seasoned investment professionals. "The Eagle Crest opportunity represents more than a distressed asset play," I explained, advancing to a slide showing competitive analysis of luxury mountain resorts. "It's the chance to redefine the alpine luxury experience while addressing fundamental shifts in what today's affluent travelers value." Laura Chen, Alpine's head of hospitality investments, leaned forward. "Your occupancy projections in the shoulder seasons are significantly higher than industry standards. What specifically supports these numbers?" I welcomed the challenging question. 3 factors. First, our comprehensive events program targets corporate retreats during traditional low periods, with commitments already secured from 4 Fortune 500 companies contingent on our involvement. Second, the Wellness Center expansion focuses on experiences unavailable elsewhere in the region. And third, the Culinary Residency program will bring rotating Michelin-starred chefs during typically slower periods. I advanced to the next slide showing financial projections. As you can see, even using conservative growth assumptions, the ROI exceeds comparable luxury acquisitions by 7% annually. For the next 40 minutes, I defended every aspect of my proposal against incisive questioning from Alpine's investment team. The plan to refinance Eagle Crest's debt while acquiring controlling interest had evolved far beyond my initial concept during our marathon strategy sessions. Diana had structured a legal approach that addressed the fragmented ownership while creating a clear path to operational control. My event planning background had informed a comprehensive repositioning strategy that emphasized experiential luxury over mere expansion. As I concluded the formal presentation, Jacob finally broke his silence. "The proposal is thorough, particularly given the compressed timeline. However, there's an elephant in this room we need to address." He looked at me directly. "Your soon-to-be ex-husband is actively pursuing control of this same asset. That creates complications beyond the usual investment considerations." I nodded, having anticipated this concern. Nathan's involvement is precisely why this opportunity exists. His approach prioritizes financial engineering over guest experience, creating vulnerabilities that our strategy directly addresses. The board's decision to extend their deliberation period confirms those concerns are legitimate, not merely personal. Jacob exchanged glances with his team before continuing. "And if this were to proceed, you envision yourself in what role exactly?" "Chief Experience Officer initially," I replied without hesitation, "overseeing the implementation of our repositioning strategy while working alongside existing operational leadership. As the transition progresses, potentially expanding to a more comprehensive executive role." Laura Chen raised an eyebrow. "That's a significant leap from event planning, regardless of how successful your company has been." "It would be if I were managing daily operations," I agreed. "But my role would focus on strategic direction and experience design, areas where my expertise is directly relevant. For operational execution, we'd retain key resort personnel while bringing in specialized talent as needed." Jacob nodded thoughtfully. "Thank you, Rebecca. If you'd step out briefly, we'll discuss internally. In the elegant waiting area outside the conference room, I took a deep breath, reviewing the presentation in my mind and identifying potential weak points the committee might focus on. After 15 tense minutes, Jacob's assistant invited me back in. The investment committee remained seated around the table, their expressions giving nothing away. Jacob gestured for me to take a seat. "We've reviewed your proposal thoroughly," he began. "The strategic vision is compelling, and the financials are sound based on the assumptions provided. However, the personal entanglements present unique risks that cannot be dismissed." My heart sank, but I maintained my professional composure. Jacob continued before I could respond. "That said, Alpine Ventures is prepared to commit to a preliminary funding structure of $30 million, contingent on satisfactory completion of due diligence and verification of the geological concerns you've identified with the North Ridge development." Relief washed through me, though I kept my expression measured. "Thank you for your confidence. The due diligence period will confirm everything I've presented." Jacob nodded. "There's more. While we're prepared to provide the capital, our participation is contingent on bringing in an experienced hospitality operations partner. Your strategic vision for the guest experience is excellent, but implementation will require specialized expertise." This was unexpected, but not unreasonable. "Did you have a specific partner in mind?" "Several possibilities," Jacob replied. "Laura will coordinate that aspect. The critical point is that we'd expect meaningful operational input, not just financial backing." "I welcome that," I assured him. "My goal is Eagle Crest's successful transformation, not controlling every aspect personally," Laura spoke up. "One final condition. Our involvement remains confidential until formal presentation to the Eagle Crest board. We won't be used as leverage in personal disputes. This must remain a strictly business transaction." "Absolutely," I agreed. "My presentation to Victor Blackwood tomorrow will outline the strategic direction and financing capacity without specific attribution unless he requests those details." Jacob stood, signaling the meeting's conclusion. "Then we have preliminary agreement. Diana will receive term sheets by end of day for review." He extended his hand. "This is an unconventional situation, Rebecca, but sometimes the most interesting opportunities emerge from unusual circumstances." I shook his hand firmly. "Thank you for seeing beyond those circumstances to the business potential." As I gathered my materials, Laura approached. "Your presentation was impressive, especially given the compressed timeline. If this proceeds, I'd be your primary contact at Alpine." "I look forward to working with you," I replied sincerely. "Your hospitality expertise will be invaluable." Outside in the crisp Denver afternoon, I called Diana immediately. "They're in. Preliminary commitment of $30 million contingent on due diligence and bringing in an operational partner." "That's outstanding," Diana responded, her usual professional reserve giving way to genuine excitement. "Jacob doesn't make commitments lightly, even preliminary ones. Did they specify the ownership structure?" "Not explicitly, but the term sheets should arrive today. The immediate focus is refinancing the debt while establishing a path to operational control." "Perfect," Diana said. "That gives us leverage without appearing hostile. How are you feeling about tomorrow's meeting with Victor?" I glanced at my watch, 3:15 p.m. In less than 24 hours, I would be presenting an alternative vision for Eagle Crest's future to the man who had built it from the ground up. "Ready," I replied with more confidence than I entirely felt. "Victor's primary concern is protecting his legacy. Our approach does that more effectively than Nathan's financial engineering." After ending the call with Diana, I drove to my loft to prepare for tomorrow's crucial presentation. The following morning would require an early start to reach Aspen Grove for my 9 a.m. meeting with Victor. Every detail needed to be perfect, not just the content of my proposal, but my personal presentation as well. This wouldn't be merely a business meeting. It would be a direct challenge to Nathan's presumed ascension. At 7 p.m., Diana arrived with the preliminary term sheets from Alpine Ventures. We spent 3 hours reviewing the details, identifying potential, sticking points, and preparing responses to likely objections. The structure was elegant, a combination of debt refinancing and equity investment that would address Eagle Crest's immediate financial pressures while creating a pathway to operational influence. "This is solid," Diana concluded as we reached the final page. Jacob's team didn't cut corners despite the accelerated timeline. The key now is how you frame this to Victor. I nodded, studying the financial projections one final time. Victor cares about 3 things: guest experience, staff well-being, and his family's legacy. Nathan's approach prioritizes financial returns above all else. Our proposal needs to demonstrate how we'd balance profitability with those core values. Exactly, Diana agreed. And you'll need to address the obvious question: why should he trust you over someone he's known for years, regardless of how compelling the business case might be? It was the fundamental challenge I'd been wrestling with since conceiving this plan. Why would Victor Blackwood entrust his life's work to someone he knew primarily as a now estranged spouse of a longtime resort family? I think the answer is twofold, I said slowly. First, the objective merits of our approach compared to Nathan's. And second, a recognition that my motivations align more closely with Victor's own. Nathan wants Eagle Crest as a trophy and financial vehicle. I want to build on the foundation Victor established while adapting to changing market demands. Diana nodded thoughtfully. Frame it as evolution rather than rejection of his vision. That respects his legacy while acknowledging the need for change. By midnight, we had refined the presentation to its essential elements, stripping away anything that might seem like criticism of Victor's leadership, while emphasizing how our approach built upon his established values. After Diana left, I spent another hour reviewing every detail until I was confident I could address any question or objection that might arise. Despite my exhaustion, sleep proved elusive. The stakes felt nearly overwhelming. Not just the financial investment and my professional future, but the opportunity to reclaim a sense of agency Nathan had tried to strip away with his public humiliation. Around 3 a.m., I finally drifted off, only to wake an hour later from a dream where I stood before the Eagle Crest board, unable to speak, while Nathan watched with that cold smile I'd come to know so well. I rose early, knowing additional sleep was unlikely. After a brisk shower and strong coffee, I dressed in a charcoal suit that projected authority without ostentation. The drive to Aspen Grove would take nearly 3 hours, and I wanted to arrive early to center myself before the meeting. The mountain roads were quiet as dawn broke over the Continental Divide, painting the snow-capped peaks in gold and rose. I used the solitary drive to mentally rehearse key points and potential challenges, occasionally dictating refinements to my presentation that I'd implement before meeting Victor. I arrived at Eagle Crest just after 8 a.m., the resort coming to life as overnight staff completed their shifts and day personnel arrived. Rather than entering through the main lobby where I might encounter Nathan or his allies, I texted Sophia, who met me at a side entrance. "Everything set for your meeting?" she asked as she escorted me through staff corridors toward a small conference room she'd arranged for my preparation. "As ready as possible given the timeline," I replied. "Have you heard anything about Nathan's activities since the board meeting?" Sophia nodded grimly. "He's been doing damage control, individual meetings with board members, revised financial projections addressing some of the concerns you raised, and accelerated geological assessment to prove the development risks are manageable." This wasn't surprising. Nathan was nothing if not adaptable when his plans faced obstacles. "And Victor? Any sense of his current thinking?" "Genuinely open to alternatives from what I've gathered," Sophia replied. The fact that Nathan tried to force a premature vote didn't sit well with him. Victor values transparency above most things. In the conference room, I spent 45 minutes making final adjustments to my presentation, ensuring the financial data reflected the terms Alpine had proposed while emphasizing the experiential aspects that would distinguish our approach. From Nathan's. At precisely 8:55, Margaret appeared at the door. "Mr. Blackwood is ready for you now." I gathered my materials, took a deep breath, and followed her to Victor's office. The resort founder greeted me with professional courtesy, gesturing to a small seating area rather than maintaining the formality of his desk. "Thank you for making time for this discussion," I began as we settled into comfortable chairs. "I appreciate your willingness to consider alternative approaches to Eagle Crest's future." Victor nodded, his expression thoughtful. "You indicated on Monday that you were developing a comprehensive proposal. I admit I'm curious about both the substance and your motivation." "The motivation is straightforward," I replied. "I've spent 6 years contributing to guest experiences at Eagle Crest. I've developed genuine appreciation for what makes this resort special: the attention to detail, the connection to natural surroundings, the personalized service. Nathan's vision prioritizes financial engineering over those distinguishing qualities. I believe there's a better approach." Victor's expression revealed nothing. "And this better approach involves your direct participation, I presume?" "Yes," I acknowledged, "but not in isolation. I've secured preliminary commitment from investment partners with substantial hospitality experience who share my perspective on luxury resort development." Victor's eyebrows rose slightly. "That's remarkably fast work, given recent events." "The opportunity demanded swift action," I replied simply. For the next 30 minutes, I walked Victor through my vision for Eagle Crest's evolution, expanding beyond traditional seasonal patterns with curated experiences that would attract distinctive clientele year-round, enhancing the wellness offerings to compete with international destinations, and implementing a culinary program that would become a destination unto itself. I then addressed the financial aspects, explaining how our approach would resolve the immediate debt concerns while creating a sustainable capital structure for long-term growth. "The investment commitment is $30 million initially," I explained, "with additional capital available for phased implementation of the experiential enhancements." Victor studied the projections with the careful attention of someone who had built a successful enterprise from scratch. "These numbers appear sound, though naturally I'd want our financial team to verify the assumptions." He looked up. "Who exactly are these investment partners?" "Alpine Ventures has provided preliminary commitment, along with their hospitality division," I replied. "They specialize in luxury properties with unique positioning. Their involvement is contingent on due diligence, of course, but the preliminary terms are detailed in this package." I handed him the formal proposal Diana had finalized that morning. Victor accepted it, setting it aside without immediate examination. "And your role in this restructuring would be?" "Initially focused on redesigning the guest experience journey, essentially expanding the event work I've done previously to encompass all touchpoints throughout the resort. As the implementation progresses, potentially expanding to broader executive responsibilities." Victor nodded slowly. "You've clearly given this considerable thought. However, I must ask, how much of this is driven by your personal situation with Nathan, rather than genuine conviction about Eagle Crest's needs?" It was the question I had anticipated from the beginning. I met his gaze directly. "The timing is undeniably connected to personal circumstances. Nathan's actions created both the necessity and opportunity for this proposal. But the substance is entirely grounded in business reality." I leaned forward slightly. "Eagle Crest is at a crossroads. Victor, the traditional luxury resort model faces unprecedented challenges from both above and below. Ultra-high-end exclusive experiences on one end and accessible luxury on the other. Merely expanding physical capacity doesn't address those fundamental market shifts. Victor considered this, then asked, "And you believe your background in event planning provides sufficient foundation for this larger vision?" "My background is in creating memorable experiences for discerning clients," I corrected gently. "The principles scale remarkably well from individual events to resort-wide application. Moreover, the financial and operational aspects would be supported by experienced partners with proven expertise in luxury hospitality." Victor rose and walked to the window, gazing out at the mountain panorama for several moments before turning back to me. "You've presented a compelling alternative, Rebecca, one that merits serious consideration alongside Nathan's proposal." Hope surged within me, though I maintained my professional demeanor. "Thank you, Victor. That's all I'm asking for, a fair assessment of both approaches based on their merits." "There is, however, a significant complication," Victor continued. "Nathan's family has been part of Eagle Crest for 3 generations. They own shares, have established relationships with the board and ownership group, and represent continuity that many find reassuring during transitions." "Continuity has value," I acknowledged, "but it shouldn't outweigh innovation when the market is evolving so dramatically. Nathan's approach represents incremental change at a time when more fundamental adaptation is required." Victor studied me with newfound interest. "You truly believe in this vision?" "Completely," I confirmed. "It represents the natural evolution of what you've built, maintaining the core values of personalized luxury while adapting to changing expectations." Victor returned to his seat, his expression thoughtful. "I'll review your proposal in detail and discuss it with select board members. The investment commitment is particularly significant. It addresses our immediate financial pressures without compromising long-term flexibility." He checked his watch. "I have another appointment shortly. Before you go, there's one more question I must ask. If the board were to seriously consider your proposal, how would you manage the inevitable conflict with Nathan? This is a small community, and Eagle Crest can't become a battlefield for personal grievances." It was a fair concern. "Professionally," I replied simply. "Whatever personal feelings exist, they would remain entirely separate from business decisions. I would focus exclusively on implementing the strategic vision we've discussed, not on past grievances." Victor nodded, seemingly satisfied with this answer. "I appreciate your candor. I'll contact you by Friday with my thoughts on next steps." As I gathered my materials to leave, Victor added, "Regardless of how this proceeds, Rebecca, I admire your resilience. Not many people could transform personal setback into strategic opportunities so effectively." "Thank you, Victor. That means a great deal coming from you." Outside Victor's office, I took a moment to collect myself, the tension of the past hour gradually releasing. The meeting had gone as well as I could have hoped. Victor was genuinely considering my proposal as a legitimate alternative to Nathan's plan. Whether it would ultimately prevail remained uncertain, but I had established myself as more than merely Nathan's disgruntled soon-to-be ex. I had become a credible voice in Eagle Crest's future. As I walked through the administration corridor toward the exit, I nearly collided with Elise Hammond turning a corner. Her momentary surprise quickly transformed into composed curiosity. "Rebecca," she greeted me with practiced politeness, "I didn't expect to see you here today." "Elise," I replied pleasantly, "I had a meeting with your father regarding some ideas for resort development." Her perfectly sculpted eyebrow arched slightly. "Development ideas? That's unexpected." "Perhaps," I acknowledged, though my background in luxury guest experiences is quite relevant to Eagle Crest's evolution. Elise studied me with new calculation in her gaze. "Nathan mentioned you might attempt to complicate the transition process. I assumed he was being paranoid." "Not paranoid," I corrected mildly. "Just incomplete in his assessment. This isn't about complication. It's about ensuring Eagle Crest has the best possible leadership for its next chapter." Understanding dawned in her expression. You're presenting yourself as an alternative. I'm presenting a comprehensive vision supported by substantial investment commitment, I clarified. One that builds on your father's legacy while adapting to evolving market demands. Elise's surprise was evident despite her attempt to mask it. Investment commitment? From whom? Your father has those details, I replied. I'm sure he'll share them as appropriate. Elise reassessed me, her initial dismissiveness replaced by wary respect. You're more strategic than Nathan gave you credit for. A common miscalculation, I acknowledged with a small smile. Though in fairness, event planning does require extensive strategic thinking, just applied to different challenges. Before she could respond, her phone chimed with a message. She glanced at it briefly. I need to take this. I'm sure we'll be speaking again soon, Rebecca. I look forward to it, I replied sincerely. As she walked away, I continued toward the exit, texting Sophia to meet me at her car. While waiting, I called Diana with a brief update on the meeting with Victor. He's genuinely considering it, I reported. No commitments yet, but he recognized the financial structure addresses their immediate pressures while preserving long-term flexibility. That's the key selling point, Diana agreed. Nathan's approach loads them with debt for expansion, while ours refinances existing obligations with more favorable terms. Did Victor indicate a timeline for decision? Friday, I replied, though I just encountered Elise Hammond, who seemed quite surprised by my proposal. I suspect she'll be discussing it with Nathan immediately. Inevitable, Diana acknowledged. The important thing is that you've established yourself as a credible alternative. Nathan can no longer simply dismiss you as an emotional ex-wife, causing temporary complications. Sophia appeared at the side entrance, and I ended the call with Diana to join her in the parking area. As we walked to her car, I spotted Nathan and Trevor Wilson in animated conversation near the main entrance, both men glancing in our direction with barely concealed frustration. Looks like news travels fast, Sophia observed, following my gaze. Elise must have contacted Nathan immediately after your encounter. Expected, I replied as we reached her vehicle. Nathan's been operating on the assumption that I'm merely being obstructionist. The existence of a legitimate alternative backed by significant investment changes the entire dynamic. Sophia drove me to the small boutique hotel where I'd reserved a room, our conversation focusing on next steps. Victor will want verification of the financial commitments, she noted, and likely reassurance about operational expertise beyond your personal involvement. Alpine is already identifying potential operational partners, I confirmed. The key will be demonstrating how our approach enhances rather than replaces what makes Eagle Crest special. At the hotel, I thanked Sophia for her continued support. You're taking professional risks by helping me, I acknowledged. I won't. Forget that when this resolves. She smiled. Eagle Crest deserves leadership that understands luxury is about experiences, not just amenities. Nathan sees spreadsheets. You see moments that matter to guests. That's worth supporting. After she left, I spent the afternoon refining aspects of the proposal based on Victor's questions and reactions. Around 4 p.m., Diana called with surprising news. Nathan's attorneys reached out, she reported. They're requesting an urgent meeting to discuss modification of the divorce settlement terms. This was unexpected. What modifications? They didn't specify, Diana replied. But the timing suggests it's connected to your Eagle Crest proposal. Nathan obviously sees you as a more significant threat than he initially calculated. I considered the implications. When do they want to meet? Tomorrow morning in Denver. I advise that you're currently in Aspen Grove on business, but could potentially meet Friday afternoon. Perfect, I agreed. That gives us time to see how Victor responds to our proposal before engaging with Nathan's new approach. After ending the call with Diana, I ordered room service and settled in to review financial projections for the Eagle Crest refinancing. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "We should talk. Coffee at Mountain View Cafe tomorrow, 9 a.m. Elise Hammond." This was interesting and potentially significant. Elise had initially aligned herself firmly with Nathan, seeing him as her path to increased influence at the resort her father had built. My proposal potentially threatened that arrangement, but might also represent an alternative she hadn't previously considered. "I can make 9:30, I texted back, looking forward to the conversation. Her response came quickly. 9:30 works. Come through the east entrance to avoid unnecessary attention." The implication was clear. She didn't want Nathan to know about our meeting. The dynamic was shifting, alliances potentially realigning, as the various players reassessed their positions in light of my unexpected proposal. I spent the evening preparing for both upcoming meetings, developing talking points, and anticipating likely questions. By 11 p.m., exhaustion finally overcame adrenaline, and I fell into dreamless sleep. The following morning, I dressed carefully, in business casual attire appropriate for a mountain resort, while projecting professional confidence. The Mountain View Cafe was relatively quiet at 9:30, the breakfast rush having subsided. Elise was already seated at a corner table offering both privacy and a spectacular view of the surrounding peaks. "Thank you for meeting me," she said as I joined her, dispensing with small talk. "I've reviewed your proposal to my father." This was surprising. "Victor shared it with you already?" "Of course," she replied, studying me over her coffee cup. "I'm actively involved in all aspects of resort operations and planning. Despite what Nathan may have implied, I'm not merely decorative in this transition." "I never assumed you were," I assured her. "Your operational knowledge of Eagle Crest is undoubtedly valuable regardless of who assumes leadership." Elise nodded, seemingly satisfied with this acknowledgement. "Your proposal is unexpectedly comprehensive. The refinancing structure, in particular, addresses pressures I wasn't certain Nathan fully appreciated." "Financial engineering is Nathan's specialty," I acknowledged. "But sometimes that focus comes at the expense of operational realities. Like rushing development without complete geological assessment," Elise noted pointedly. "Exactly," I agreed, surprised by her apparent alignment with my concern. "The North Ridge project has potential, but not if fundamental safety considerations are compromised for schedule expediency." Elise leaned forward slightly. "Let me be direct, Rebecca. I initially saw Nathan as the obvious successor to my father, financially sophisticated, connected to resort history, aligned with my own ambitions for expanded influence." She paused, choosing her next words carefully. "Your proposal creates complications in that assessment. The financial backing is significant. The operational vision aligns more closely with my father's values, and the experiential focus addresses market shifts Nathan seems to underestimate." I maintained a neutral expression despite my surprise at her candor. Those were precisely the elements I hoped Victor would recognize. "He has," Elise confirmed, "which brings me to the purpose of this conversation. What role do you envision for existing leadership, specifically for me, in your restructuring scenario?" And there it was, the real reason for this meeting. Elise was pragmatically reassessing her options, recognizing that her alliance with Nathan might not represent her only path to increased influence at Eagle Crest. "A central one," I replied honestly. "Your operational knowledge and connection to Eagle Crest's history are irreplaceable assets. My focus would be on experience, design, and strategic direction, working in partnership with existing leadership rather than replacing it." Elise studied me, clearly assessing the sincerity of this statement. "And if my vision occasionally conflicts with yours? Then we discuss the merits of each approach based on what best serves Eagle Crest's guests, staff, and long-term success," I replied. "Healthy disagreement often produces better outcomes than rigid alignment." She nodded slowly. Nathan offers certainty, a clear hierarchy with defined roles. You seem to propose something more collaborative, potentially more complex. Complexity often better reflects reality, I observed, especially in luxury hospitality where nuance matters tremendously. Elise took a sip of her coffee, her expression thoughtful. My father expects to make a preliminary decision by tomorrow. The board will require more time for due diligence, naturally, but his recommendation carries significant weight. Understandably, I agreed. His legacy deserves careful stewardship. Indeed, Elise said, rising to indicate our meeting was concluding, which is why the decision must prioritize Eagle Crest's future over individual ambitions, including my own. She extended her hand. This has been illuminating, Rebecca. I appreciate your directness. I shook her hand, recognizing that while not explicitly stated, something important had shifted in Elise's calculation. Likewise, I hope we have opportunity for further discussion as this process unfolds. As she departed, I remained at the table, processing the implications of our conversation. Elise Hammond had just signaled potential willingness to consider alignment with my proposal rather than Nathan's, a development that could significantly influence Victor's decision and ultimately the board's vote. My phone buzzed with a text from Diana. Nathan's attorneys confirmed for tomorrow, 2 p.m. at our offices. Also, Jacob called. Alpine's hospitality team has identified potential operational partners. Conference call at 4 p.m. today to discuss. The pieces were moving rapidly now, the landscape shifting as various players adjusted to the unexpected alternative I had introduced. Nathan had initially dismissed me as an emotional inconvenience to be managed through a generous but controlling divorce settlement. Now he was seeking modification of those terms, recognizing belatedly that financial settlement alone wouldn't resolve the challenge I represented. As I left the cafe, I glanced toward the mountain peaks that had drawn generations of visitors to Eagle Crest. Nathan saw them as backdrop for real estate development and financial engineering. I saw them as the essential soul of an experience that deserved protection and thoughtful evolution. Whatever happened in the coming days, whether Victor embraced my vision or ultimately chose Nathan's approach, I had already achieved something significant. I had transformed from victim of public humiliation to architect of a legitimate alternative future for the resort Nathan loved more than he had ever loved me. The balance of power had shifted, not through emotional reaction, but through strategic vision and business acumen. Nathan had attempted to erase me from a world I valued. Instead, he had inadvertently created opportunity for me to potentially remake that world entirely. The irony wasn't lost on me as I walked back to my hotel, mentally preparing for the negotiations, still to come. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.